Welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman Congressman Mark Alford from Missouri, and I believe in America. I believe in you, and most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead. Each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, news, legislation that impacts our lives. We introduce you to the individuals I get the honor of working with right here in Washington, D.C. And one of those is my friend, Congressman of the 23rd District of California, Mr. Jay Obernolte. He's a video game developer, an AI expert, a small business owner, certified flight instructor, and I didn't know this, he teaches martial arts. Maybe we'll get into that. He got his bachelor's in engineering from the California Institute of Technology, his master's in AI from the University of California, and his doctorate from California Baptist University. Before Congress, he was in the California State Legislature, the mayor of Big Bear Lake, and on a lot of boards. He does it all, and we are in his office in Longworth. Mr. Jay Obernolte, thanks for letting us come in today.
Absolutely. It's great to see you, Mark.
You're one of the first persons I met when I got to D.C. In fact, your wife is my wife Leslie's mentor or big sister, whatever they call, and we've really learned a lot from you guys. Thank you. I want to start with the AI issue because everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. You are an expert in this field. You have helped train us in Congress as to what to expect in the next years and really even months. It's developing so fast. How big is artificial intelligence now in the world?
Well, it's going to fundamentally transform not only our economy, but our society. But that does not mean that it is going to be a force for evil. I think it's going to be something that's hugely beneficial. It's going to be disruptive. But technological revolutions are always disruptive, most recently with the internet, but going all the way back to the printing press. That was very disruptive, but I think disruption can be a force for good. And I think ultimately we're going to look back on AI as something that is going to be one of the best tools for empowering the growth of human productivity and the dissemination of human knowledge that mankind has ever come up with.
Is it going to replace humans?
Well, in some senses it's going to, and I know that that's one of the things people worry about is job displacement. If you look back on the internet, there certainly was a large amount of just displacement caused by the internet, but it created far more jobs than it displaced. And I think that that's ultimately going to be true of AI as well.
What are some of the other downfalls or potential things we need to look out for?
Well, this is one of the problems we have with AI. There are a few topics that we legislate on that, like AI, have been informed by 50 years of science fiction and pop culture. So if you ask the average American what they think the chief hazards of AI are, you'll get an answer out of a Terminator movie where an army of evil robots rises up to take over the world with their red laser eyes. That's not what we worry about, but what we worry about taken together is equally consequential. We worry about things like the use of AI to potentially spread mis and disinformation. We worry about the AI being used for people for cyber theft. We worry about AI in a national security setting being used by our geopolitical adversaries to target our critical infrastructure. Where we worry about the ability of AI to pierce through personal digital data privacy and de-anonymize data that's been anonymized. So all of those things taken together are equally consequential to an army of evil robots. But these are things that government and Congress in particular have an obligation to prevent. And so I think that this has been our goal. When we think about the role of the federal government in regulating AI, you have to have a reason for regulating. If you are just regulating for the purpose of creating regulation, I think you've embarked on a fool's errand. So this is the context in which we're looking at AI regulation is what are the potential hazards of AI? What are the government's responsibilities in mitigating those hazards? And how specifically can we fulfill those responsibilities?
One of the things you mentioned was misinformation, how AI might play a role in putting out misinformation. And yet at the same time, we're striving against censoring speech. How do you reconcile the two, allow for speech, even if it's generated by AI?
Well, it's a great question. This is a topic that we have almost an entire chapter in our upcoming AI task force report dedicated to. On the one hand, there are uses of AI to create misinformation that I think everyone can agree is not okay. And I'll give you one concrete example, what we call non-consensual intimate imagery. That's when, for example, a school-age child uses AI to superimpose their classmate's face on a pornographic body and pass around a movie of that. And that's something that millions of American youth are having to deal with right now. That is not okay, right? That's a violation of not only their privacy, the rights that they have to their own likeness and their reputational harms that occur when you do that. But as you say, you can't ban the use of AI to do anything, to fake out anything, because that impinges on our First Amendment right to free speech. And we want to make sure that we don't stifle the use of AI to do that, because AI is an incredibly powerful tool to human expression. And we also get into areas where there are conflicts between the use of intellectual property and copyrights and the use of AI. And I'll give you a concrete example that one of the senior executives from Disney was sitting right here on this couch a couple of weeks ago. We were discussing this issue that they fear the use of their trademarks in people using generative AI to create images in movies. We got into this discussion about theoretically someone, I mean, perhaps one of my political opponents, using generative AI to create an image of me standing next to Darth Vader with Darth Vader having his arm around me. They might do that because we understand that Darth Vader is a powerful symbol of evil in our society, and the image of him with his arm around Congressman Jay Obernolte conveys the political belief of the creator that my actions are evil, as evidenced by the presence of Darth Vader, right? This transcends Darth Vader as a character in a Disney-owned movie. And so this is an issue that we have to navigate. It's very complicated. But fortunately, this is not brand new territory for us. We have hundreds of years of experience in applying this doctrine of free speech to the doctrine of expression, right? And figuring out where those limits are. And I think that our judicial system is up to the challenge of navigating this with respect to AI.
Will individuals start trademarking their own image and likeness so they would be protected?
Trademark is a kind of a term of art. So the answer to that is probably no. But the larger question is, do people have a right to their own likeness and a right to control the use of their own likeness? And if so, where does that right originate and who enforces it? And so that's something that we're going to have to look at, not just as a society, but as a U.S. Congress, to try and figure out how those intersect. Is it okay for someone to create an image of my next door neighbor doing something that he never did without his permission? Does that right change when it's an image of either you or me as public officials? And the courts have ruled on that latter question resoundingly yes.
When you're a public figure.
Yeah, we're public figures. Therefore, we're going to factor into the public conversations.
But they could use you or I, they could change our image and put us in with Kamala Harris, something that we did not want to be associated with. Is that going to be allowed on the political front for advertising?
Right. The good news is this is not a new topic, right? This is now in the public eye all of a sudden because it's become increasingly easy to do these deep fakes that are harder and harder for people to detect with the naked eye.
It's getting tough now.
But we've had Photoshop now for a generation, right? And so even the way that we in our generation can look at an image and wonder, has that been Photoshop? Because I don't believe that Mark Alford would ever be standing next to Kamala Harris that way, right?
Right.
We are going to have to instill that same skepticism in the next generation when they see a movie of something, Like imagine an era when you can generate just by typing text into a prompt, give me a video of Congressman Jay Obernolte in a ski mask stealing a 6-pack of beer from a liquor store, as seen by a security camera. And then you can say in a follow-on prompt, okay, now feature that video with the commentators on Fox News discussing how Congressman Jay Obernolte is really in big trouble this time. When it's that easy to create that misleading
That's possible right now to do.
Sure, yeah. It's in a way that a sophisticated actor might be able to detect. In a few years, it'll be so seamless and so photorealistic that you won't be able to tell it's fake. So the question has arisen, and this is a question our task force has been discussing. Do we require all artificially generated content to be somehow digitally watermarked so you can tell that it's fake? But the problem is that's not going to work for the same reason that requiring watermarking on fake currency doesn't work. The people that follow the law put the watermark on it, and the people that are incentivized to break the law don't. And so you really have accomplished nothing. So really, ultimately, what we're going to have to do is raise awareness of authenticity and provenance. So if you're Fox News, for example, you're going to want to encode your legitimate content in a way that lets people easily verify that it came from you. And that's how you protect against someone trying to generate a fake broadcast of Fox anchors talking about Congressman Jay Obernolte.
Stay with us on Mark Alfred's America. We'll be back just after these commercial messages, continuing our conversation with Congressman Jay Obernolte. We're talking about artificial intelligence. I want to talk about the drones that everyone's seeing now, and then how he got his start in video games. Stay with us. Welcome back to Mark Alfred's America, where we share the stories of individuals making an impact in D.C. and across our nation today. We're talking with Congressman Jay Obernolte from Big Bear Lake, California. Great ski area out there. We're talking about artificial intelligence. He's an expert in that. Tell me about the task force. I know you guys are doing this, and we talked the other night. You're coming out with a 250-page document. Can't wait to look at that. What are some of the striking things that you think we'll find interesting in this task force report?
Well, the primary thing is that this is a bipartisan report. So that was very important to me. I think that no one can predict with accuracy who's going to control the House in 2 or 4 or 6 years from now. But one thing you can say with certainty is that the balance of power will continue to be narrow. And for that reason, anything that we do is got to be that's substantive. It should be bipartisan. And the reason why that's important is that the investments that are required to train the current frontier large language models are in the billions of dollars. ChatGPT-4 was $100 million.
Yeah.
The current generation is going to be about $1 billion, and the next generation is going to be in the billions, plural. And no one is going to make that kind of capital investment if they're afraid that when the balance of political power changes a little bit, that the rules governing the use of AI are going to completely change, right? It's going to have a really chilling effect on innovation. So thing number one, this is a bipartisan report. And the other thing that I think people are going to be very interested in is that we have taken a very different approach than the path that the European Union has gone down. They have created a universal licensing requirement for all uses of AI beyond low risk. And they've spun up a brand new bureaucracy that's going to enforce this parallel regulation on anyone that uses AI. We think that is the wrong approach for the United States. We believe in regulating outcomes in this country, not tools. AI is a very powerful tool, but it is still just a tool. And so we think it is appropriate to regulate AI with the sectoral regulators that already exist rather than creating new bureaucracy. So, for example, the use of AI in a medical device or a diagnostic test. That's something obviously the government will want to be involved in regulating. But we think the FDA has all the tools they need to do that because they're already in the job of regulating these tests and these devices from the standpoint of ensuring patient safety. So we think it's easier to teach the FDA what it might not already know about AI than it would be to teach a brand new bureaucracy everything that the FDA has learned about ensuring patient safety. And that's something that was a broad bipartisan sentiment that's contained in the report and is very different than what's being done elsewhere in the world.
One of the concerns is the power usage for these data centers that are the brains, basically, of the artificial intelligence. We have them popping up in our district. There's pushback from neighbors who don't like the noise, and it's driving up energy costs for a lot of people. How is that going to impact society as we know it? This increased need for energy to drive the computers.
Right. Well, I think it's important to note that the reason why people are using AI is because it's improving their lives. It's improving their productivity. It's fostering the sharing of human knowledge. These are all good things for our society, and it requires energy to do those things. This folds into an idea that I know you and I share, Mark, which is that we need to create energy abundance in our country. And
yes.
we absolutely can. We have all of the tools that we need to do that. We need to adopt an all of the approach when it comes to energy production, where we embrace, yes, the renewables that are coming, but also the nuclear power that we abandoned far too soon back in the 1970s.
These are different than 3 Mile Island. When people hear nuclear, these are small nuclear units.
Yes, with next generation technology.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know if you'd heard, but 3 Mile Island is being reactivated
Yes,
with
I
new
heard that.
technology to power an AI data center.
I didn't know it was for AI.
Yeah.
When it comes to defense, we have said we will not use AI to make decisions in the battlefield, in the theaters of conflict. They may aid our generals and our decision makers. China's not signed on to that. That's scary.
Yes. I think that we have to be very specific when we talk about what we are allowing and what we are prohibiting. So, for example, there are some classes of weapons that you absolutely want a human making the decision for. Nuclear weapons, obvious example. We would never allow the use of AI to make automated weapons release decisions for anything that touched nuclear weapons. If you look at the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, however, you'll find that automated weapons release decisions are being made by AI in the context of drone attacks, because many times the drones are beyond line of sight. You can't talk to them anymore because they're being jammed. They have to have that ability for autonomous weapons release. So we, as a military, are going to have to make some very uh, morality-based decisions on when those automated decision-making processes are okay and when they're not. But as you say, the vast majority of the time, you want a human making the decision, not just in the loop on the decision, but actually making the decision. That's not something that we're willing to cede to a machine.
Since you brought up drones, let's shift to that. People are really freaked out about these car-sized zones flying over New Jersey. Our brother here, Jeff Van Drew, congressman from New Jersey, has come out with some information about what they may be, and it involves Iran. What is your idea? What is your take on these drones that we're seeing over many parts of the United States now?
Well, to the extent that we can't explain what they are, we should be very worried about that. But in general, drone technology is going to be a good thing for us. I am the co-chair of the Advanced Air Mobility Caucus in Congress. And if you want to know what an air mobility vehicle is, picture a drone that's scaled up to carry between 2 and 4 people. And you'll get the idea, kind of a quadcopter with 8 or 10 rotors on it. These are coming. I mean, we'll get first commercial certification by the FAA of one of these vehicles probably in the next 12 months.
In fact, the FAA now in Kansas City is mapping out lanes above our highways for which these can move.
Absolutely.
This is an active system right now that they are mapping out, that we can have these autonomous vehicles carrying people like Buck Rogers.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we've been trying to implement the Jetsons now for the last 50 years, and I think this might actually do it. And imagine how it's going to revolutionize personal mobility if you can, and this is not science fiction, this is what these air mobility companies like Joby and others are proposing as possible. You can summon one of these vehicles with an app very much like an Uber. It will come down to a vertiport that's within a couple of blocks of your neighborhood, because it's something that doesn't require a lot of space or generate a lot of noise. You can get into one of these vehicles and ride 15 to 30 minutes to your directly to your destination, and get out in a vertiport and walk a block or two to your destination for the same price per mile as an Uber is currently. That's amazing. Think about what that's going to do for elderly mobility. Think about what that's going to do for surface traffic. First responders and emergency services.
So will buildings have heliports, for the lack of a better term, on most buildings now, so they can transport?
Yeah, the FAA calls them vertiports because the design criteria are different from helicopters. There are some things that are easier because these are more capable vehicles than helicopters in a lot of respect, and they don't generate the same noise as a helicopter does. More difficult in some respects because these are all electric vehicles that need to be frequently charged. They're designed for not long trips. You wouldn't get into one in LA and get out in Washington, D.C. They're for short trips, and you charge them in between. So
will they be flown autonomously?
Ultimately, that is the plan, but initially they will all be piloted.
Yeah, I don't think people have a comfort level. But they're not going to replace helicopters totally, will they?
No, they aren't, because they have fundamentally different missions. So a helicopter can fly for a couple of hours, even the small ones. These vehicles can fly for 40 minutes max, and then they're out of battery, so you wouldn't want to be in one more than 30.
What do you do if you run out of battery power in 500 feet? What's the space they're going to fly at?
Typically at lower altitudes, maximum
500 feet.
Maximum a couple of thousands of feet. The more advanced of them are also wing-borne, so you take off vertically, then you accelerate, and the rotors actually feather, and the lift is generated by the wing until it comes time to land. And that's very efficient. But I think it's really going to revolutionize the way we travel.
Real quick, let's talk about how you got started in game development. Some of the games that people grew up playing, you invented those. Tell us about those.
Sure. Well, little known fact, I wanted to be an AI researcher when I was in high school, and so I went to Caltech, as you mentioned, and then to UCLA, and I was working on my doctorate at AI at UCLA when my side hustle at the time, which was writing video game software, took off. And that's something that I only did to put myself through graduate school. I had no idea I could actually have a career, but the game that really turned things around for me was a game I wrote for the Sega Genesis called NFL 95 for Sega Sports.
Wow.
And that deflected me out of a career in academia into a career in business. And so I ran that studio for 30 years, and my oldest son runs it now.
Fascinating. Jay, you're a fascinating person and friend. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to Mark Alford's America. We'll see you again next week. But before we go, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Jay Obernolte, I believe in America.
I believe too. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.